Hi, I'm Michael Dresdner. I've spent many years working in professional finishing shops, and I've done a lot of spraying in my time. Probably the two most important things I can tell you about spraying are that it's fun and it's fast. It's not as efficient, as far as materials go, as applying a finish with a pad or a brush. But when it comes to time, that's where spraying really shines. It gets you out of the finishing room fast. Spray finishing also allows you to use fast drying finishes, and that means that dust and dirt don't have as much time to settle into your wet coating. Now, spraying isn't some complicated ritual that's difficult to do. It's a simple nuts and bolts kind of thing that's no harder than learning to use a brush. A spray gun atomizes finish, which means that it breaks up the liquid into tiny droplets and mixes them with air. The air and coating material travel through channels in the gun to the air cap and the fluid tip. The coating material is broken up into tiny droplets and mixed with the air at the tip, then shaped and directed by the speeding air. If you're going to spray, you really need to do it in a booth. It can be a complex professional model or something as simple as what I'll show you now. Several 4x6 foot cardboard panels held together with duct tape. This booth stores flat in my plywood rack and unfolds very quickly. The lid on this booth goes on with Velcro tabs that hold the whole unit rigid and let me adjust the size of the front opening so that I can spray almost any size furniture. Once it's up, I open the garage door just enough to make room for the fan, which, as you can see, is covered with filter cloth to keep it clean. The fan goes into position in the cutout at the back of the booth. Plug it in and you're ready to go. To make sure you stay in clean air, you must always spray toward the fan, never away from it. That means that in order to spray the back side of your furniture, you'll need to rotate it. A turntable is just the ticket. I've cut a 4-foot circle of plywood and attached it at the center to an 1¼ inch pipe flange. A 2-foot section of 1¼ inch pipe threads on. There's my base. I do the same to the top using 1-inch pipe and flange. The smaller pipe fits perfectly into the larger, making a long, strong bearing that spins easily and breaks down for storage. I also have a fold-up window booth that I use for spraying small items. It consists of 3 angled panels of cardboard that attach funnel-like to the front of a box fan in my window. It attaches with duct tape, and a filter goes on the front to keep the fan clean. This benchtop turntable is made from an old Pontiac clutch bearing. There are 3 common types of spray systems that you're likely to run across. Each has its advantages and disadvantages. The first is a conventional or standard spray gun. A standard spray gun is driven by a compressor. That means it needs to be hooked up to an air compressor. And it has the ability to spray virtually any type of material, thick or thin. Its one disadvantage is that it's wasteful, in that only about 25% of the coating you spray will end up on the wood. The next type, the HVLP turbine system, is substantially more efficient. It runs off of a portable, self-contained turbine unit that plugs into any standard 110 outlet. The disadvantage here is that it may have trouble spraying some thicker materials. The next type of system is sort of a hybrid of the other two. It's an HVLP conversion gun. Like a standard gun, it uses a compressor to supply it with air. And like the standard gun, it can spray both thick and thin materials. It can also deliver material as efficiently as an HVLP turbine gun. People frequently ask me, can I get as good a finish with an HVLP gun as I could get with a standard gun? The answer is yes. What's the main difference then between the two? Pressure. A high-pressure spray gun works a bit like this water nozzle. It has no trouble getting lots of water onto the car door, but plenty of it also bounces back into the air and onto me. By contrast, setting the nozzle at a low pressure creates a mist gentle enough to water these delicate flowers, with little or no liquid bouncing back or going astray. A conventional high-pressure gun is a good choice if you already own your own compressor and do most of your spraying in the shop. Until recently, it was really the only gun there was. It was the standard in the industry, and anyone who sprayed coatings used this type of a spray gun. But as I said before, it tends to be somewhat inefficient and results in a lot of overspray. Anytime portability is an issue, like when you need to spray the backyard fence or kitchen cabinets in place, a turbine system really shines. It goes anywhere fairly easily, and it'll spray most of the common materials we woodworkers use without creating clouds of overspray. If your shop is equipped with at least a 5-horsepower compressor, buy a conversion gun. It'll give you the flexibility of a high-pressure system and the efficiency of a turbine system. It'll let you spray any type of material with very little overspray or bounce back, which is just another way of saying that it gives you a high transfer efficiency. Why such a large compressor? Most of these guns draw a lot of air. This is a high-pressure gun, but a small one designed mostly for touch-up work and spraying small objects. I'm going to use it to spray a chair with shellac, and it is just perfect for that job. You could also use this gun to spray any of the coatings that we'll use later in this video. Before I start, I want to spray a test to make sure the pattern is even. Here's a small 1-inch round pattern that draws out into a tight line. By turning the fan control knob counterclockwise, I can change the spray pattern into a longer 4-inch oval that sprays out into a wide, even swath. On most guns, you can adjust the size and shape of the fan. Even with a strong fan, I always play it safe with a respirator, which you should always store in a sealed plastic bag. The filters get used up whenever they're exposed to moving air, even when you're not wearing them. This is a siphon feed gun, which means that as the coating is sprayed out, the space it leaves in the cup is replaced with air. An occasional poke with a toothpick keeps the air intake hole clear. I start with the chair upside down, propped on a plastic crate. I always follow a particular spraying pattern or sequence to make sure I coat all parts of the chair evenly. First, I hit the bottom of the stretchers and the inside edge of the legs. My gun's relatively small fan size is just right for the width of these spindles. Finally, I do the bottom of the seat. Notice that I leave a small unsprayed strip just under the front edge of the seat. You'll see why in a moment. I lift the chair by the back and set it on the turntable right side up. Now I'll spray the tops of the stretchers and the rest of the legs. My thumb grabs the bottom of the seat just at that little strip of unsprayed wood. Planning ahead makes spraying much easier. I always spray things like chairs in just the same way, so the pattern becomes second nature and I never miss a part. It's a good idea to imagine a pattern that will cover all areas of the piece before you start to spray. Along the way, the tops of the stretchers get an extra shot because they get extra wear from all the shoe soles that rest on them. After I hit the stretchers, I go to the left front leg and continue counterclockwise around the chair, hitting all sides of each leg. With the legs all coated, I spray the bare wood that was my thumb grab, and then I spray all around the edge of the seat. Now I spray the front and rear of the chair's back, hitting the top edge twice, because it gets handled more than other parts of the chair. If there were arms, I'd give these 2 coats as well. The last part of the chair that I spray is the seat. Because it's horizontal, it's most likely to pick up overspray. By hitting it last, I can avoid this. This is a turbine-powered HVLP gun with a pressurized cup. That clear tube going from the gun to the cup carries air that will force the coating up into the spray nozzle. It's important to stir all waterborne coatings before spraying. I check the way it runs off my stirring stick to see if it's thin enough to spray properly. This is. Rather than run the material through a filter, I put one of these barrel-shaped screens on the end of the stem, so I'll be filtering the finish as I spray. A 1-inch diameter hose goes from the turbine to the gun. The turbine plugs into a standard wall outlet. Notice how long a fan pattern this gun produces. To switch from a long oval to a round fan pattern with this gun, you simply turn the air tip 45 degrees. If I turned the tip 180 degrees, it would change from a long vertical fan to a long horizontal fan. Once again, we'll devise a spraying pattern so we'll always know what to do next. I start with the case upside down and I hit the inside corners with the gun's fan set to a small round pattern. Then I switch to a wide fan pattern and I spray the back and shelves. Of course, these are actually the bottoms of the shelves. The outside is still dry, so it's easy to flip the bookcase right side up. I no longer need the cardboard on the turntable, so away it goes. With a narrow fan setting, I start again on the inside corners. Then with a wide fan, I spray the inside walls of the bookcase and the tops of the shelves. And finally, the front edges of the shelves. Now I switch to a wide horizontal fan and spray the sides of the bookcase. One more 180-degree turn and I'm back to a vertical wide fan. I spray the top from behind to keep overspray from going into the already finished interior. Now let's move up to an HVLP conversion gun. This is a gravity feed model, which means that the finish flows down from a cup into the path of the air. Gravity moves the coating, and all of the air pressure goes to atomize the material. This time I'll spray lacquer, but the basic spraying technique is about the same for any of the coatings we're using in this video. Spraying a flat top is fairly easy. I start by hitting the edges with the gun set for a narrow fan. Then I adjust to a wide fan, and I spray the first pass across the grain to wet the entire piece. When I'm done, I spray again with the grain, overlapping each pass by about 2/3 the fan width for uniform coverage. A double pass like this guarantees a full wet coat, but you don't want to flood the top, so keep the gun moving and keep an eye on how much finish goes on. Spray too heavily and the finish will puddle and form a ridge of coating at the edge. As you spray, hold the gun so that the tip is about 8 inches away from the wood. With a 10-inch fan, this gun covers even large surfaces quickly. It's important to move the gun's tip in a line parallel to the top as you spray. This rough texture in the wet coating is called orange peel for obvious reasons. It will often level out as the finish dries. If it doesn't, sand it lightly to level it and add more thinner to your finish before the next coat. In spraying, you can have too much of a good thing. Here, I'm deliberately laying lacquer on a panel too heavily just to show you what happens. The finish runs. This is called curtaining. I think you can see why. Further down it will harden into drips. Not a great look. On the other hand, if you don't overlap your spray pattern enough, you'll get alternating bands of wet and dry wood. Don't forget, overlap by about 2/3 the width of each pass. Sometimes it's easier to just hold the work in your hands. I've mounted this guitar body to a stick so I can do just that. Once again, spray pattern is important. I start around the outside edge of the guitar. After that, I spray both the back and the front with a pass across the grain. Now I'll go back and spray both back and front with the grain. No need to change the fan direction on the gun. I simply change my grip on the guitar. Now it's time to clean the gun. First, empty any remaining finish. Pour the appropriate thinner into the cup and spray some of it out through the tip to clean it. Of course, spray towards the fan, not away from it. I dump the remaining thinner into a pan. I want enough in there so that I can soak the small parts of the gun. First to come off is the air cap and fluid tip. Each part goes right into the soak tray. This gun uses a clever round wrench for removing the fluid tip, which also goes into the tray. Next, I remove the large knob on the back of the gun along with the spring that surrounds the fluid pin. I pull the trigger to back up the fluid pin, then pull the pin out from the back of the gun. Finally, I unscrew the cup and set it aside. I don't like to soak the gun body because the packing material that seats the fluid pin can be destroyed by soaking. Instead, I take a small bottle brush or pipe cleaner, dip it into my cleaning solution, and carefully scrub out the passageway that the coating went through. That's the area from the base of the cup to the back of the fluid tip. Now I make sure that all the coating material is off by brushing with an acid brush and a small toothbrush. Each part gets a visual inspection. I scrub out the small passage in the fluid tip with a fine pipe cleaner. I keep both my ventilation fan and my respirator on during this cleanup because I'm working with an open pan of thinner. When all the parts are clean, I wipe them off and lay them out for reassembly. Now I go back and clean both the cup and its lid. I take extra care around the lid's threaded area and the small fluid hole at the bottom of the cup. I even wipe the outside of the cup clean. When I'm done, my respirator goes back into sealed storage. First in is the fluid pin. Its spring-loaded knob gets a bit of Vaseline on the threads. The spring goes onto the end of the fluid pin and inside the knob. Once the knob is screwed in place, I pull the trigger to check for smooth action. Here I'm lubricating the threads on the fluid nozzle. I pull the trigger to get the pin back out of the way, then carefully screw the tip into its seating. This part must be snugged up with the wrench. Hand tight is not tight enough. Turn it snug, but remember that the threads are delicate, and you'll need to remove this nozzle again next time you clean the gun. I lubricate even the edge of the air cap and the threads of its retaining ring, which gets screwed on just finger tight. Finally, I lube the cup attachment threads and lid threads. Now all the parts are together, clean, and thanks to the lubricant, easy to disassemble for next time. My gun is ready for its next job.